Giving me one more meeting. I think for who? I'll let y'all do it.
Okay, we're ready? Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call to order the meeting of the City of Bloomington Council. If everyone could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Councilmember Kearns. Here. Councilmember Bowman.
Here.
Councilmember Motney. Councilmember Dannenberger.
Here.
Councilmember Becker.
Here.
Councilmember Hendricks.
Here.
Councilmember Ward. Here. Councilmember Lee.
Here.
Councilmember Crumpler.
Here.
Mayor Millawamboy.
Here. We're going to move on to recognitions and appointments. Madam Clerk, do we have any? I think we have one, right?
Yes, we've got Joseph Blaney going to the Transportation Commission.
Okay, thank you. Now we're going to move on to public comment. Do we have any public comment, Madam Clerk?
Yes, we have 3.
Okay. Public comment is an opportunity for speakers to provide their views and feedback to the City Council. It's also an opportunity for the City Council to listen and hear diverse points of view. To maximize the impact of public comment and show respect for the expression of all views, speakers should maintain civility and focus on city issues. Speakers must identify themselves for the record, but are not required to give their address. Each speaker is given the floor for 3 minutes, and the council does not respond or engage in debate. Any speaker that engages in threatening or disorderly behavior will be deemed out of order and their time ceased.
First, we don't have any emailed public comment. And then our first speaker will be Dan Brady.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are you this evening? Thank you for this opportunity. And with respect to item A for action tonight on the council's agenda, termed an emergency homelessness ordinance, I'd like to thank the city administration and staff for their work on this ordinance. This ordinance, like my proposal of a disaster declaration from the state for emergency help that I publicly released on June 20th of this year during a heat wave, is designed to help resolve this encampment issue and homeless issue in Bloomington. I would further like to suggest to the council and city staff that the former Owens Nursery property and now soon to be City Yards location be considered for a temporary shelter as we enter the fall and winter season and as it sits empty. This property, with its existing 22 to 25 Morton-style building structures and greenhouse structures, with a already all having, most having, I should say, working electricity, would be a possibility for temporary housing. Temporary is a key word there. This 34-acre site, especially in the far east section of the property, is in a secure area and can be further secured. The city either already owns this property or is in the process of finalizing the purchase. And prior to construction starting, this might prove to be helpful in this community during the winter months as it sits empty, and as a possibility to help offset from Salvation Army and homeless situation right now at Home Sweet Home Ministries. Thank you very much for the opportunity to address the council. Have a nice evening. Thank you.
Next.
Next up, we have Serena Fish.
I'm about ready to give up. So the tent city, I'm some of the same things. I go along with Mr. Brady. I think that's a great suggestion. I commend the Salvation Army for stepping up and doing something, but their area is a common area. So you have men, women, children in a common area. Also, you now have another group of people who are closer to the downtown business district who is already having major problems with vagrants, looting, everything you can think of. And now you're going to move another whole group of people who have already proven to be problems because of where they are. And they're the last of the last, and we're having a problem for someplace for them. So I commend Mr. Brady's idea that making the Salvation Army more affordable for family and doing something like on the Owens property for those single people. The other thing is we had an extremely good PSCRB meeting on our local police, Bloomington Police Department, Normal Police Department, Sheriff, and ISU Police. It was well attended, except by you guys. Okay, so most of the council, the mayor, and most of the council did not attend. One council person was kind enough to call and say, I'm out of town. Thank you, Sheila, for stepping up, at least in saying. 2 council people came and left early. 1 council person came and stayed at the whole meeting. Thank you, Donna Boland, for really spending your time and effort and being really for the citizens of Bloomington. The rest of you, you should have been there because it was a really, really good meeting. And it was something that the community we had to cut it off because we ran over 2 hours. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next.
Next, we have Gary Lambert.
Good evening. My name is Gary Lambert. A couple items on the agenda tonight. First of all, I am against granting any additional, whatever the wording was on it, temporary emergency powers to the city manager. The governor of the state had that power. Was supposed to get approval from the legislature, I believe, before he extended it. I read through it there and I see that he's supposed to come back and get approval. It's awfully easy to ignore it after the fact. Secondly, was just mentioned about the nursing grounds down there. Near as I can tell, and certainly you people know better than I, I don't see where the city manager had the authority to make that deal without the council's approval. If I'm wrong, I'd be happy to stand corrected. But what I have seen, it's always easier to come back after the fact and get approval when it's too late to do anything about it. Not suggesting there was anything wrong, but that's why we have a city council to make those decisions, and the mayors, and to a limited degree, the city manager. So, thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
all we have.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna move on to the consent agenda. I know we have one that needs to recuse himself. Which item is that?
7F.
7F, okay. Are there any other items that council members would like to remove, or is there a motion to approve without 7F?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Hendricks.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Bolin. And we're using clickers, right? Okay. Good, Donna. Okay, awesome. The consent agenda passes without 7F, no nays to announce, and so now we're going to consider item 7F and see if we can do that before he gets to the door. Okay, and Mr. Becker is removing,
I'll make the motion
Councilmember
to
Becker is
approve.
removing himself because he works for that company. So Councilmember Bolin has a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Councilmember Hendricks, trading places here. I think we're gonna go with the clickers, right? Councilmember Crumpler? Okay, all right. Okay, item 7F passes, no nays to announce, and Councilmember Becker can come back. Okay, and now we are going to move to item 8A, a consideration and action on an ordinance declaring an emergency related to homelessness during the community, within the community, and authorizing the city manager to issue executive orders to increase indoor shelter capacity as requested by Mayor Mokumalambwe, which would be me, and the city council. So before I turn it over to City Manager Jurgens, I know this has been a long standing issue, but I certainly want to express my appreciation to not only our staff in the name of City Manager Jurgens. I know Deputy City Manager Tyus has also been fairly involved for quite a while, but also members of the nonprofit community such as Salvation Army, but also Home Sweet Home, and certainly also Eastview. I also want to thank the council for, I know this has been a difficult issue, but I think, we've all, there has been just a desire to be helpful, thoughtful, and really, think through all of these critical issues before making decisions. So definitely appreciate that. Want to turn it over to City Manager Jurgens for his remarks.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight, staff is bringing before you an ordinance declaring an emergency related to homelessness. Like many large cities, we are seeing an increase in homelessness, and we want to do our best to address it. This ordinance creates a legal framework for me as city manager to issue an order waiving certain building and other code requirements to allow the Salvation Army to expand its shelter services over the coming winter months. We have codes for a reason, but leaving our unhoused without proper shelter for another winter is too high of a risk. We will have in place safety measures, including adding alarms, 24/7 staffing, training on fire suppression equipment, and other requirements such as clearances and doorways in place to ensure the safety of the residents and the people who are staying at the Salvation Army. But again, we believe that the risk is too high to go yet another winter without providing some sort of shelter for those that are unhoused in our community. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I would like to thank Major Dan Leisher, who's here from the Salvation Army, and his staff for working with us on this issue and for helping to stand up the shelter for this winter.
Okay, Councilmember Ward?
I'd move approval, but I do have some questions.
Sure.
I would second.
Okay, second by Councilmember Hendricks. We'll start with you then. Yeah, yep. with you.
Yeah, my questions, thank you for this and thank you for all the hard work that this represents the beginning of. Obviously, there's more to be done and this is really just the beginning of work that has been underway for a very long time. And some of it isn't as well known as other work and other proposals that perhaps aren't aware of the complexity of what all this involves. So thank you to you, city manager, and the staff for all the efforts on this. I do have a couple of questions about the safety issues, the safety protocols that you touched on, city manager. And I wondered if you might be able to say just a couple more words about some of those things, because why are they necessary? And I believe that they are necessary, but perhaps you could enlighten us a little bit more about why those are necessary. And in particular, I think there's a reason for those, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there are safety issues with leaving people out in the freezing cold. There are fire protocols the safety protocols that we're potentially waiving, but if people are cold, they're going to start fires out in the cold. If people are unsupervised, there are going to be issues with potential crime. And so I commend you for putting these protocols into place, but I wonder if you could say a little bit more about why the extra protocols are needed.
Certainly, and I'd say these are pretty standard protocols that we put in place, and I think they've been in place in other situations as well. I would say that the Salvation Army shelter is sprinkled, so there are sprinklers within the facility. That helps a lot. But some of the areas where individuals may be sleeping on a cot or something like that, there's not maybe a door or a fire suppression wall between that area and another area. So it's those types of technical requirements that we'll be waiving. And because of that, we want to make sure, one, that it's staffed, that somebody's awake, and if there does need to be some sort of an emergency evacuation, that they are prepared for that. So we'll have the exits clear, we'll have people trained, or they will have people trained on obviously how to use fire extinguishers and how to watch for those types of things. But those are the types of things that'll be in place, and they're pretty standard in this type of situation.
And presumably the 24/7 staffing addresses some of the concerns that have been raised about people sleeping in common areas and so on and so forth, right?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Bolin, and then Motney, I think.
Yeah, I have a few comments to make. This emergency proclamation is, according to the packet, is until March 31st, is 3 months. And then it needs to come back before council for further extension or approval. Something may come up that might be a better option between now and then, or after March 31st. So we have to play that by ear. And as far as housing, the unsheltered at some other facility like the Armory or the Owen, not the Owen Nursery. Well, yeah, the Owen Nursery, whatever other empty buildings that people have recommended. Salvation Army and Home Sweet Home Mission provide a service. They are providers. Their facilities have things like showers, bathrooms, laundry, things that we take take for granted in our home. So you don't want to house someone in a facility where they cannot shower. Even though the people living in tents right now have been allowed to go into Home Sweet Home and Eastview to take care of some personal hygiene. So I just want to make that clear. There's no opportunity for food on those off-site areas. And actually, if the service providers outside of Home Sweet Home Mission and Salvation Army that would help with mental health issues, they need to have access too. You really can't expect them to go out to some building halfway across town to try to serve someone that has mental health issues. So it is very important to keep the population, I don't want to say confined, but in an area where all these services can be provided to the best of our ability. It's very complicated. The city manager and staff have brought forward several suggestions to try to resolve this issue, and this one seems to be the best. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Thank you. Councilmember Motney.
Thank you. So first of all, I just would like to thank the city manager and everyone who worked on putting this together. So appreciate that very much. And this is more of just a clarifying point based on some inquiries I received. The cover memo to this particular ordinance declaring the emergency indicates financial impact not applicable. And I just wanted to clarify for those here and for those who may watch this broadcast that this is not, when we state in the ordinance, all reasonable steps necessary, that does not include appropriations. It does not include spending money outside of the city manager's authority relative to this issue.
That's correct. They've estimated that it is going to cost some money to staff this, to get the equipment that they need. That's one of the things we actually sat in this room with a number of service providers and talked about and how we were going to get that funding. Eastview Community Church has stepped up. They're providing a $50,000 donation to fund this program over the winter months. So there's no ask of this council to help fund that. And there won't be an ask of any other agency to help fund that. So we were very, very pleased that they were willing to step up and provide that support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other questions, and I know we have a motion already, right? So yeah, so we can go ahead and vote then. Okay, the item passes, no nays to announce. And now we're going to move on to item 8B, a presentation update on the City Council's housing initiatives as requested by the Administration Department. And I'm going to turn it over to City Manager Jurgens for introductory remarks.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. It's been nearly 2 months since the council approved its priorities related to housing. We wanted to provide a quick update on that tonight. Before I turn this over to Deputy City Manager Billy Tias to really walk through some of the more specifics, I wanted to provide just an update on where we are regarding housing. If we could go to the next slide. A couple of slides I wanted to share. The first one is the inventory of homes for sale. Received this data from the Mid-Illinois Realtors Association. This is for Tazewell, DeWitt, and McLean County, but you can see a kind of a continuing decline I think this goes back to, what's the date on that? 2008. So you can kind of look at this from 2008 and where we are today. And if you look the last 12 months compared to the previous 12 months, trending a little down on the number of units for sale. If you could go to the next slide. This is just McLean County, and this shows the number of units available starting in 2019 to where we are roughly today. In Bloomington, we are currently, as of today, we have 114 units that are under 250,000 in the city of Bloomington. I'm told from the Realtors Association, 250 and under is really the sweet spot. And so again, we have very low inventory and about 114 of those units, 200 some, are under 250,000. If you go to the next slide. This just shows the market time that the units, single detached family units are on the market. There's really statistically been no change over the last 12 months, just showing again some of the market time. And then finally, the next slide. Also want to plug our website, buildingbloomington.com. This provides a lot of information for those who are interested, including the number of residential units in progress. Right now, we have 495 multifamily, 446 single family in the works, and 48 duplexes. This dashboard also will show you how many permits have been issued and how many permits have applied for. But again, this is a great resource if you want to see what's in the pipeline, what's being built, and where it's being built, along with the status of where it's being built. With that said, our staff's been working very hard on trying to come up with some incentive packages and other ideas to help continue to spur housing and specifically affordable housing. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Billy Tias.
Thank you, sir. Mayor and city council members, next slide, please. A couple of things. One, while one part of the reasons for this discussion and the symposium and other things we've done is the fact that we're racing to figure out how to get new units built, but obviously there's some issues with having that happen, not just here, but across the country. So while we pursue new construction, rehabbing older units is critical for a lot of reasons. One, it helps to solidify housing demand and make sure that people who are in these homes have quality housing while they're in them currently. And again, it helps to address the housing need. And the other thing is that it's the right thing to do. Hopefully you can see from the map that we have a really active housing rehabilitation program through a variety of different sources, both through ARPA and CDBG and IDA and other programs. Part of the issue, they're great programs, but part of the issue often becomes that there are still a lot of people out there who can't access these programs. And probably the largest reason is that there are folks who are not considered low income. A lot of times these are considered low income housing programs. But there are folks out there whose income is too high to be low income, but not enough to afford the work on these houses that they need to get done. A lot of the folks that we talk about that could habitate the missing middle housing are the folks I'm talking about. There are people out there who make more than what is low income, but are living paycheck to paycheck. And so it becomes hard to fund some of these improvement programs. So one of the things that our Economic and Community Development Department looked at was, are there programs that we could help folks who have some of those challenges and also address some of the other challenges that you see on the slide. Mobile homes currently aren't funded through some of these programs. A lot of times these programs only fund the larger project, but not the smaller ones that, if left to fester, can create bigger problems. So next slide, please. They've come up with a couple of programs to recommend, again, very high level, still more work to be done. One of those is an exterior repair and improvement program. One of the things that is being recommended is that we target these programs for the regeneration area. And on the map, that is actually the pink area. It's the area identified in our comp plan as the comp plan called for revitalization of this area to be the highest priority. There's a high concentration of lower income neighborhoods. There's properties that are of an older housing stock. And there's just a lot of need there. So we're recommending targeting the regeneration area. However, having said that, you could also target the regeneration area and the preservation area. The preservation area is in the more orange color. And those are the neighborhoods where they have the highest number of historic properties and landmarks. And there's some private investment there, but there's still a lot of properties that need help in that area as well. So in theory, not in theory, we could choose to target one or both of those areas if we move forward with something like that. As you can see, some of the eligible work are those projects that, again, left to fester, can create bigger problems in some of the homes. We talked about income. So Bloomington is fortunate and blessed to have a higher than normal average median income. But again, what that means is that folks are making more, but in a lot of cases, they still can't afford some of the work that needs to be done. And so we're suggesting this program be for folks who are at or below 120% of annual median, average median income, annual median income. And so the first number that you see there is for an individual. And then the second number that you see there would be for a family of 4. And again, the projects that you see listed, project minimums and maximums are for $5,000 to $20,000. Exterior repair program. Next slide, please. A second program that we've talked about is a minor home repair and improvement program. And let me back up a little bit. When we talked about these priorities, you as a council also, I think several of you stressed the importance of creating rehab programs as well. That's why you made it obviously a priority, but I think some of you spoke outwardly about it being important. So second type of program that could be a minor home repair program. So you can see on the screen, some of the projects aren't as large as the others, and some of them are internal issues that, again, if left to fester, can create significant problems. And again, there are a lot of folks out there who can't afford to do those types of projects. You can see the project minimums and maximums. Both projects that we've talked about would be funded through a general fund allocation during the budget process. And the ECD staff has looked at this and believe that a recommended budget of $40,000 to $50,000 for this program could be adequate, could be helpful. And then the other program, I think, was $160,000 to $200,000. Could be appropriate. Again, as we always do, we will always be looking for grant funding to help fund some of these things, always. And we've shown that have been able to find success with a lot of those grant programs in recent years. So we're confident that we can. But again, just targeting those dollar figures. Next slide, please. Other programs. One of the things that the city manager has talked a lot to us about is wanting to do a community impact day. And again, you've seen those in other cities where, we partner with residents, or what if we could partner with labor in our community, or we could partner with Heartland Community College or others to go out into neighborhoods on a regular basis and perform rehab projects. Not the big, we're not building houses in this case, but small repairs, things like painting and mowing and fixing small things around homes. We think that could be very popular. It could be very helpful for a lot of people who just can't do this kind of work. I believe BN Land Trust is doing something similar at this point, so maybe we piggyback with them and partner and work with them on their program, or we figure out a way to work together. No need to reinvent the wheel, honestly. The second program is we're calling it a home acquisition and rehab program, and I actually get excited about this. It's what if we, through grant funding, could acquire some of the derelict vacant properties that we know can be saved, rehab them to code standards, and sell them to first-time home buyers. There are communities that are currently doing that across the country. Again, partnerships could be great for this kind of thing. Funding, as I talked about, we believe we could fund this through grant programming. It's just, I could say we're working with Heartland, and it's their industrial technology program, which is construction, and we're teaching people how to build houses as we work to rehab these programs. So it would provide housing to first-time home buyers, but again, it would help to provide training and partnerships. And we get excited about things like that. As I said, there are examples. Right down the road in Decatur, there's an abandonment to rehab program. And I think they have 10 homes that they're looking to rehab and sell. I think they just sold 1 or 2 in the last couple of months. And then Iowa City has a similar program as well. So just a couple of other programs. Again, this discussion tonight is really things that we're looking at. Just want to give you an idea of programs that we're looking at as possibilities. Still more work to be done to see what would work and what wouldn't. Next slide, please. And so actually, Economic and Community Development Director Melissa Hahn and I are going to tag team on this discussion. And so she's going to take the next several slides and talk about some of the other things that you have set as priorities.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and City Manager. So one of the things that was identified as a priority to look at was the zoning and subdivision codes. And so as part of that, we have been meeting with Opticos, a third-party provider, to have them come in and look at our zoning code. And they are really experts in the field of determining missing middle and, where there's barriers within the zoning code and, changes, potential changes that could be made in order to make that easier to develop within our community. So interestingly enough, staff was looking at different providers, and then also somebody mentioned they knew someone, and it just happened to be the same company. I believe they also gave a presentation at Heartland Community College not too long ago. So already have some exposure within the community, but it was just kind of interesting that we had two different paths and came to the same conclusion. So we've been currently talking to them, working through a contract to have them come in and provide that evaluation of our current zoning code. And so we'll still continue to be working through that. Also, we'll have a round of zoning code updates that will come before council on Monday, September 23rd. That just went before Planning Commission here just last Wednesday. And so you'll see in there not a ton of huge changes related to housing, but one, just some minor things. For instance, we realized with ADUs there was some height restrictions that were limiting people to do like above garage apartments and things like that because of the regulations within certain districts, to where you'd have to build a very height limiting apartment. So just some minor things like that, some cleanup that we did to make that easier to develop. So those will be coming before council on Monday, the 23rd. And then staff, the Economic and Community Development staff is working with the Department of Engineering, and they are currently working through the subdivision code. That has been needed for quite some time. So we're happy to finally get to that and be spending some time and looking at the subdivision code and how to make developing subdivisions within our community a lot easier. So we'll be working through that as well. Next slide, please.
I wanted to add just to that, no, really quickly. And specifically in our conversations with Opticos, we did specifically talk to them about looking at some of our parking codes. I know there are a couple of you on council and perhaps others who have concerns or questions about how we manage and handle parking, and whether there are ways to be more flexible with that to spur development. So we did specifically ask them about that, and that'll be a part of our conversations.
So the next part, the next item we looked at were standardized housing incentives. And as part of that resolution, it was for to help incentivize affordable and low income housing. So what we've been looking at is kind of how we can utilize potential fee reductions for low income and tax credit low income projects within the community. Next slide, please. So one thing that we've been looking at when we talk about low income housing, so we've been looking at that individuals that are at 60% of AMI. So for an individual, that would be around 45,000, and looking at what would be considered affordable housing costs for those individuals, as well as for a family of four. And then looking at what we would consider to be affordable housing, and that would be anybody between that 80% to 120% AMI. And as Billy mentioned, we are very fortunate to have a very high median income in our community. So when we're looking at these, this just to give you an idea of what we're looking at when we're talking about affordable housing costs. So calculating some of the city fees and BINWARD fees is what we've been looking at. Next slide, please. And the way that we've kind of been looking at it here was maybe doing more of a tiered structure, where depending on how much affordable housing you were going to be providing, the number of units, and how many of those were going to be retained for those for the considered low income at 60%, affordable at 80 to 120, those receiving LIHTC, as well as units that they would be willing to partner with the housing authority and offer housing choice vouchers. So still a work in progress, but this is kind of how we've been looking at one potential option. And so you'll see there on the left that looking at a 100-unit building, we could be potentially looking for a city fee waiver at 50% of around 128,000, 100% at about 257,000. We've also had conversations with Benward, potentially waiving their fees as well. So this just gives you an idea of, for a 100-unit building, kind of what the standard fee would be for a 50% waiver and 100% waiver for Benward.
And I want to be clear that Benward has not formally agreed to waive the fees, and that's not what you said at all. But just, I don't want anyone leaving here thinking that they have. There would be more conversations to be had with them in terms of seeing whether or not they would be willing to waive all or part of their fees as part of a housing program for a limited period of time.
Next slide, please. So with those fee reductions, as I mentioned, we've been looking at multifamily and then also single-family homes. Once again, looking at what potential options could be if someone were to come in and either do individual single-family homes or a subdivision of single-family homes, if they were willing to lease or sell those to individuals who were at 60% or 80 to 120% AMI. And then also we've talked about, as Billy mentioned, having the program set at a certain amount. So we would waive up to X amount, whatever the council determined was appropriate. And obviously we would provide some recommendations. And then also, setting a date certain of when that would end. So either up to a certain amount or to a date certain set for a period of time. So hopefully that would help incentivize individuals to first come, first serve and act quickly and come develop within the community to help meet our housing needs. Next slide, please.
So those are some very specific programs that the ECD has worked on, but we've also talked about a number of other possibilities that could come as part of a standardized incentive package. And not necessarily for low mod income housing, but could be. But there's several other things that we're taking a look at. When we've talked in the past, there seemed to be an appetite for the possibility of rental assistance. Again, if we did something like that, we would want to guarantee that there was a minimum percentage of affordable housing in the development, and also some income restrictions as well. A 5-year EAV tax freeze, that's come up in the past as well. Again, to be clear, that would require taxing body agreement, including the school district and others, where they would agree to, for a 5-year period, to freeze assessments. Here's what's good about that. If there were a higher need for tax revenue from these taxing bodies, they could still raise the ask. It's just the EAV on the property would not be raised, which gives developers a level of comfort that they won't have to see a very large spike in their taxes. In talking to developers, this was a very popular possibility for them. And finally, pursuing an enterprise zone amendment. Again, there's currently a graduated property tax abatement in the enterprise zone, but it's not for residential properties. We could talk with the parties that make up the developers of this enterprise zone to see if that would be a possibility. Again, to be clear, in the past, school district hasn't been in favor of this, but this is a different time. And we know that we're having significant housing issues, and perhaps they might at this time. So, but I want to be clear, we would need to be having those conversations with them before we would move forward with something like that. But again, it becomes another tool to be able to help developers get over the financing gap of building housing in our community. Next slide, please. And finally, this one is actually intriguing. It's something that we looked preliminarily at, but we haven't gotten too far with it. It's a pre-approved housing catalog where perhaps we take a look at our community, we take a look at the type of housing that works well here, we look at the character of our neighborhoods and our community, and we put together a catalog of properties that could be pre-approved and what would be required for floor plans and size of lot, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the things that does is that it speeds the process considerably for developers who they could go to the book and say, hey, I want to build 100 of number 5. It's already been considered, reviewed, and approved architecturally and otherwise. So it speeds the process up considerably. South Bend does this, and they say once people have gotten through the early part of the process, they can do reviews in 2 days. And so that's significantly faster than most communities, frankly. And so just something else we're taking a look at. It's intriguing. We've heard a lot about it, but more to come on this. And I believe that's all the slides. Thank you all.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Tyus. Really just wanted to give the council an update, let you know that we are working on a number of different proposals. Obviously, before we bring anything to you formally to consider, we'll have all the financial impacts evaluated with that and the recommendations and have some further details. But wanted to just share, this is something we continue to work on and know it continues to be a priority for the council. Happy to answer any questions.
Sure, thank you. And one quick question that I have is, what is the timeline of when you would bring something back to us more significant or at least definite to consider?
Well, the Opticos.
Not to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. I'm used to it. The Opticos item is this month, and we think, but and I don't know that it's a council item, but it's something that we're close to on an agreement. And that has been something that was significant for folks in the community. We hear a lot from folks. Hey, can you please take a look at your zoning ordinance? Can you please take a look at what are barriers to building? So that we're very close on that agreement. Some of the other items like the fees, actually ECD has fleshed out those programs. We want to make sure that we're confirming some of the numbers that we based our work on, but that could be yet fourth quarter. I mean, early fourth quarter, I believe. Melissa's looking at me like she's gonna punch me, but we some of those things could be yet fourth quarter, early fourth quarter, and we're almost there anyway. So
Sounds good. Councilmember.
Yeah, just
Kearns?
to continue with that question, just quickly about, because you had mentioned one program was possibly looking at restructuring CDBG money. So would that be this current or the next strategic plan? I know I'm butchering all the words for that, but the one that's coming up, the next one.
there it is. I'm gonna let Melissa answer this or ask her to answer this. We realized that there would have to be an action plan amendment in order to do something different. I may have butchered that as well. But I don't know what it looks like because we don't know yet what the programs would be. So I'm gonna let you answer that.
So for the current annual action plan, that one's already in place because that started May 1. So the next annual action plan would be next May 1. The consolidated plan we're currently working through. And so depending on if priorities change for some reason in the feedback that we've gotten through that process, but I think historically, like affordable housing, rehabilitation has always been one of the priorities. So I think it would just be a matter of if we wanted to, set the annual action plan up differently than we have previously, as far as how the funding is allocated. And then we also have reached out to Housing and Urban Development, as Billy had mentioned too, as well, to see if there are any other funding streams that could potentially be used.
Okay. Councilmember Boland and then Ward.
Thanks for all the work on this. I think that a lot of these recommendations are, well, they're actually very good. I do have a couple of comments, and that has to do with the local median income. All those people that are here from Rivian, most of them that are working at the Rivian factory make $50,000, which would mean they're more likely low income if you take away the taxes that they have to pay. So I just want to throw that out there. As far as the cutoff for allowing, if somebody's making 90,000, I mean, that's not really a rich person, but they would probably be more likely to be able to afford fixing their home or saving to fix their home. Whereas someone that makes
50,000 minus their income tax would not. So I would like to keep that number a little bit more suppressed for the median income and raise it up for those that make 50,000.
Understood.
And then, let's see, what does the duration of the program mean? That was mentioned several times as far as funding.
So one thing that we talked about, if you were referring like to the standardized incentives, that piece, we had talked about either setting aside a specific dollar amount and a specific term. So either whatever comes first, if that's the part you're referring to, that's kind of what we were considering for the standardized incentive. So say that we maybe set aside 2 million, we say, okay, well, either up to the 2 million or within 5 years. So if in 5 years, we haven't had enough developers come forward, then the program would just end
Okay.
without expending
Okay.
all of the funds.
Okay.
That's what we would looked at as far as
Okay.
the standardized.
Well, that makes sense. That's kind of like other programs that have been brought forward. Okay. And also, I guess I'm being kind of pushy here, the 10 to 20% in, if a developer is going to build either an apartment building or a neighborhood, but they have to include 10 to 20% of affordable housing, I also feel that should be bumped up to 40. Because in a sense, 10 to 20% really is not, it's not scalable to the point that would meet those $50,000 a year people that we have in the community. And I really like the pre-reviewed. However, in order for it to be successful, people that would want to purchase one, they can't change. I mean, they really can't change. Oh, I want granite countertop, or I want an extra bathroom. It's usually, that's for information. You guys know that, but that's for general information. And I'm a real stickler on this because I live in a suburb. Tap-on fees for sewers. Sewers and water are enterprise funds, and they have to save their money in order to do work. So I really don't support taking away tap-on fees. However, if there are other fees that are administrative, sorry, sorry to the administration, but yeah, I'm not in favor of reducing tap-on fees and things like that. And that's it.
Thank you. I think next I had Councilmember Ward and then Motney.
Yes, also, I'd like to say thank you for all the hard work that's going into this, and I really look forward to a moment where we can begin to actually vote on some of these ideas and really actualize them. I wanted to comment on just a few of them. One in particular, with regard to the incentives, I wonder if there's any opportunity to include some incentives for accessory dwellings or the add-ons to the garages. A while back, we allowed for accessory dwellings. We made some changes to the code to allow for that kind of thing. And I just wonder if there are any opportunities there to encourage people if they're willing to build something like that. I also very much like the idea of the pre-approved housing catalog. And I wonder if there'd be any opportunity for us as a city to create almost a catalog or a directory of the smaller repairs that people are needing help with, so that from time to time, I have people coming to me saying, oh, is there we have a community group or a youth group from our faith community, and we want to do a alternative spring break or something like that. And it would be really wonderful if there were a catalog available to say, yep, you can go here, here, and here, and there is an opportunity for you, and to link people up to that kind of thing. I really like the idea of working with community groups for those kind of repairs. I know that I'm pretty sure Habitat for Humanity in some places has programs not just for building new houses, but for making repairs on existing structures. I know the West Bloomington Revitalization Project has a long history of supporting that kind of thing in the past. And as I mentioned, faith communities and so forth. So I think being that kind of bridge builder between those groups who are looking for something and people who have the time and the resources could be a really wonderful thing.
Thank you. Councilmember Motney?
Excuse me, Mayor. We're out of time.
Oh, that's right. Thank you.
Did you want to do an
Is there a
extension?
motion?
I'll make a
Council-
motion to
okay.
extend for
I'll
5
second.
minutes.
Okay, yes, Donna and Cody, yes, that's the pair today. All right, for how long? 5 minutes? Okay, all right, let's do 5 minutes. Voice vote?
Yeah, we can do voice vote.
Okay.
Councilmember Kearns?
Yes.
Councilmember Bolin?
Yes.
Councilmember Motney?
Yes.
Councilmember Dannenberger?
Yes.
Councilmember Becker?
Yes.
Councilmember Hendricks?
Yes.
Councilmember Ward?
Aye.
Councilmember Lee?
Yes.
Councilmember Crumpler?
Yes.
Motion
Okay.
passes.
Okay, awesome. So Councilmember Motney?
Just a few questions and a couple of comments. First of all, I'd like to reiterate what Councilmember Bolin said about the annual median income requirements at 91,875 plus when we're talking about grant award amounts in the 5,000 to 10,000 range. It seems to me that that would be very high, particularly given the estimated amounts of the grants. So just some feedback on that. I noticed there were some references occasionally to the total program cost, and one illustration showed up to 2 million. And my first question is, where would we be cost shifting from or reducing funding in other areas in order to fund these programs?
If I'm understanding your question, we're not saying pay those amounts. We're saying reductions in fees going forward in order, perhaps up to that dollar amount. And I do understand that it's all planned for money, so I understand that. But that would have to be a conversation that we would have to have, one. And two, there's nothing magical about $2 million. It was a number given as an example of a possibility. So then depending upon what could be done, that could help to determine what that number would be if we did that.
The next one's more of a comment. It's a bit surprising to hear that the city would take title to these properties in the one example that we were given. And I'm just wondering if conversations have taken place with nonprofits or other organizations with respect to the example you gave about vacant or dilapidated properties that perhaps could be rehabbed.
It absolutely could be a third party, and that's actually a great idea, and it's smart to have another entity or organization to actually hold title and lead the program.
Some of the requirements are, or the opportunity for incentives, if you will, seem like they could be okay. I'm just wondering if we put any type of residency requirement for these things, because if we start with different programs that could be, augmenting rents or incenting other developments and things like that, we might perhaps be drawing people into our community. And it just would seem to me the spirit of the prior discussions that I've listened to were about taking care of the folks who live here. So I'm just wondering, as you've talked about program design, if you've talked about some type of a residency requirement.
We have not. It's something we can talk about, but it's not something that we've had a conversation about.
Next, back in June, our city manager led a very good discussion, I thought, on the regular agenda discussing the housing symposium. And I'm just reminded in that housing symposium, it was shared by those who participated that code zoning issues and process issues weren't really the barrier to them building at present. It was really more the macroeconomic issues such as the current interest rate environment. And I just wanted that backdrop to be in this discussion as just a reminder. And if we are going down these paths, if there's an appetite to go down these paths, if there is some trigger that would remove some of these incentives as interest rates change and start to go down. So just a comment, since again, it was the interest rate environment that seemed to be the main feedback that we received at that time from the development community.
Go ahead.
Oh, no.
No, I don't disagree with that at all. The thing I would say is that while we had a very robust turnout for the symposium, it was fantastic. Obviously not everyone was able to attend, and we regularly hear from people that make comments and have questions about our zoning ordinance. And so, we think it's worth taking a look at what our rules are to see if there are barriers to building and development.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Did you?
Yeah, if I could just
You have the
just add a
last word.
final point, kind of a finer point on what Deputy City Manager Tyus mentioned is thinking about like smaller developers, like that audience was large developers or bigger developers, thinking about how they can bring units to our community. And I think, other aspects that maybe they aren't talking about are what can get our smaller developers or people who are trying to do incremental changes might, like those types of zoning changes might help them be able to get in the game and things like that. So yeah, just kind of thinking about it comprehensively. So I appreciate that.
Okay, well, thank you. Really appreciate it. Definitely giving us a menu of options, right? And this is what it's all about, something that we will be able to take a look at and see what the appetite is, not only on the council, but, in the community for any of the options that you bring up. So really appreciate the work and looking forward to seeing more. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we are going to move on to city manager's discussion.
Thank you again, Mayor and Council. Again, just want to thank the council tonight for the approval of the emergency ordinance. It's really just the first step in doing some different things to try and address the homelessness issue in our community. And I mentioned this earlier, but it's truly, groups, the town of Normal, the county, nonprofits, other providers, really sitting around rooms like this and talking about the issues and what we can do to make an impact and move the needle. And that's, I think, how we're going to get ahead of this issue and how we're going to address it. In addition, I had a call from a resident today who was reading about the issue and wanting to know how her group and her neighbors can help. I think it's all of us coming together and working on this issue that we will really make a difference when it comes to homelessness in our community. So we'll be coming forward with more ideas. Not saying every idea is going to make it, but we're going to keep trying. We know that as a community, we need to do better and we need to provide the shelter for those that need it. So we will continue working on this issue. This is really just the start tonight. Next slide. The Bloomington Bison will be unveiling their jersey on Thursday, their inaugural jersey. The first game is about 40 days away in October. So they've got an event coming up at the arena. Just wanted to highlight that. And you can get more information at the BloomingtonBisonHockey.com website. Next slide. Two other quick slides tonight. This is a recognition from the regarding the Bloomington Emergency Communication Center. It was reaccredited with the world's 59th accredited Center of Excellence for Fire Emergency Dispatch by the International Academies of Emergency Dispatch. This recognition underscores the dispatch performance, its commitment to excellence in emergency fire dispatching, and its dedication to providing the highest standard of service to the Bloomington community. So we're very proud of this. They were accredited in 2021, and this re-accreditation marks a significant milestone for them as well. So wanted to highlight that for the council and the community. And the next slide is another accreditation. This one involves the city being sensory inclusive. This is something that we probably don't talk about publicly enough, but we have a lot of employees that have children with sensory needs. We are starting to see those children become employees within the city and other organizations. So this is clearly an issue within our society. And I'm proud that the city has taken steps to become sensory inclusive. Want to highlight a couple of our employees, Lindsay Denny in our HR department and our HR director, Nicole Albertson, who have really spearheaded this. But our staff has gone through training. We've taken a number of steps to get to this point. And so this is our second accreditation as being sensory inclusive. And that's all I have tonight.
Okay, thank you. And under mayor's comments, in the spirit of brevity, I am going to pass on comments and give council members a chance to say a few words if you'd like. Councilmember Hendricks.
I just wanted to quickly mention, just out of respect for our city manager and council, that we did vote to approve the Owen Nursery purchase on June 10th as a council, and I believe we all voted unanimously for that. So I just wanted that to be in the public record.
Thank you. All right, well, with that said, no executive session. So is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion by
Second.
Councilmember Bolin, second by Councilmember Hendricks. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. See you next week.